just because people are smart does not mean that they cannot make dumb decisions. So, what's the best example of a smart person being incredibly stupid you've ever experienced?
Oh, I almost forgot about this one. When I was in my final year of physics at university, we had a professor who would get very irritated at the pull string for the projection screen, as it would dangle down in front of the whiteboard. Every morning, he would spend a good couple of minutes attempting to throw the weight on the end over the light fixture above the whiteboard, taking anywhere from 5 to 30 tries each time. All the students would give tips and encouragement, and this became a kind of inside joke for the class of how long it would take every morning. Months go by, and one day near the end of the quarter, we end up with a substitute. The sub goes to the board and, without hesitation, grabs the string and hooks it over a thumbtack stuck in the cork at the top of the whiteboard. The entire class literally gasped in unison. The sub whirled around, asking what happened, and the whole class just starts laughing. Eventually, someone explained what happened, and we all had a good laugh that an entire class of physics majors never even thought of that solution, let alone noticed that the tack had always been there for that purpose.
I worked in information technology at a university. We got a call saying a printer would not turn on. The particular person who called was a very stereotypical, "I have a doctorate, I know all the things" kind of person. Anyway, I get to the classroom, and they show me the printer proclaiming they checked everything including the power strip, unplugged it, plugged it back in, and all that. They were very irate and rude the whole time I was there. While I was looking it over, they were getting more upset because they had already checked the power cables and they were fine. Without saying anything, I unplugged the power strip from itself, plugged it into the wall, then turned on the printer, and just walked out.
Our physics professor once had held a remote lecture without turning his Google Meet on. So, he just spoke to the computer for 1.5 hours.
University physics professor at a Hyundai dealership arguing with a tech telling him about the noise in his car. The professor was freaking out saying he couldn't even understand what the tech was trying to say, because the tech said, centrifugal force, instead of centripetal force. The conversation could not move forward. It was weird.
One of my best friends, who is now a surgeon, and one of the smartest people I have ever met. During his first year of med school, he was visiting his hometown during a break in the semester. We were at a restaurant catching up. He ordered a milkshake for dessert that came with a maraschino cherry on top. He excitedly ate it and then said something to the effect of,
"Man, I love maraschino cherries, I could eat 1,000,000 of these. I always wanted to buy a jar, and eat it all to myself."
To which I replied with, "John, you're 24 years old. You own a house, have money in the bank, and are in med school. You're an adult. If you want to get yourself a jar of maraschino cherries, you can. We can hit up the store as soon as we're done here." He spent about 5 minutes struggling to process this newfound information. You could almost see the gears in his head turning. After this brief delay, he looked at me with the biggest, almost childlike smile and said,
"Let's go now."
We paid our bill, then headed to the nearest grocery store. John then purchased the largest jar of maraschino cherries available and started eating. Afterward, we went to a house party, where John refused to drink, but instead just kept eating from his jar. Long story short, he ate the entire jar in about 1 hour. 15 minutes later, he started puking neon red cherries for the rest of the evening.
My father-in-law is very intelligent. He taught himself how to solve a Rubik's Cube without looking anything up and is generally a genius in math, logic, and puzzles, what have you. He believes dinosaurs couldn't be real because they would be too big for their skeletons to uphold their weight. He has lots of other really stupid ideas because he is so intelligent. He thinks he can just reason himself into correct conclusions without doing research or adhering to the scientific process.
Intelligence is like horsepower. It's great at getting you where you want to go quickly, but you need to be facing the right direction first.
I used to work at a chemical engineering plant. One day I was in the kitchen washing my glasses with a drop of dish soap, and one of the lead engineers said I shouldn't wash my glasses like that. I asked him why not, and he responded that I would wash the prescription off.
Not mine, but related to me by my boss about 25 years ago. She was friends with a husband and wife who were brilliant academics, and highly regarded with research positions at one of the top universities in the country. The couple wanted to have children, but their natural biological compatibility said, "Nuh-uh, not going to happen." And they decided to adopt instead, from a foreign country, as very few babies are put up for adoption within Australia. The arrangements were that the baby would be flown in with a caregiver and handed over at the airport. All went as planned, no worries. Later that night, my boss received a call from the distraught academic husband.
Louise! The baby is crying and we can't get her to stop. We think she's hungry, but she's not taking a bottle.
The adopting agency had given them a few basics just in case, one of which was a tin of baby formula.
You're a mother. Can you come over and maybe help sort out what the problem is?
Of course,
replies Louise, and is there within 15 minutes, this being a fairly small city on an international scale. The wife rushes up when she knocks on the door and escorts her to where the baby is indeed crying like there's no tomorrow and has been for hours. Nappy is dry, nothing else is obviously wrong, and she probably is hungry.
Show me how you've been trying to feed her,
Louise asks, and the couple complies. Louise observes their process and makes one suggestion.
You're actually supposed to mix the powder with water before trying to feed it to the baby.
If you're enjoying today's video, smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos and interesting stories. Now let's get back to the stories of our lives.
Mother-in-law could construct a new bladder out of a piece of your own intestinal lining if you had bladder cancer and needed a new one. He's saved thousands of lives that otherwise would have been lost to renal, prostate, and urinary tract diseases. He once told me that someone with a bright yellow car was intentionally hitting his Mercedes-Benz. They'd hit his car and sideswiped it once while he was at the hospital. He had it fixed. It costs thousands of dollars. Then a few weeks later, the same bright yellow vehicle did it again, this time nearly tearing off his fender and leaving a huge yellow gouge down the side of his car. He took it to the body shop a second time. His next time visiting the hospital, the parking attendant said,
Hey doc, it's nice to see you. But I have to warn you. Security was here and they're kind of upset about the fire hydrant you've hit twice in the last month. I tried covering for you, but apparently, they've got it on video.
My doctor. During the period of my life in which I was dating my ex-girlfriend, my doctor would insist every time I saw him that I needed to be on birth control because it was responsible to be preventing pregnancy. No matter how many times I told him that I was in a monogamous relationship with a woman, he would still keep asking. I guess it just didn't compute.
My brother is very intelligent. He lived at home when attending college. Most days, he'd take the bus. Sometimes if my mom didn't need her car, he would be allowed to drive it to school. Multiple times he drove the car to school, forgot, and took the bus home.
I've been waiting so long to tell this story. 2 members of my family are very highly intelligent, so I always thought. I go to their house, and they just installed an above-ground pool that came with a pool cover. Instead of using the pool cover, they went and bought all these insulated pink foam boards. I just sat there and watched while they cut up all the foam into like puzzle pieces to fit in that round pool. I asked them why, and they said it was to keep leaves out of the pool. So, every time they got in the pool, they had to remove all the puzzle pieces, then clean the pool because tiny pink insulation was floating on top, and when they were finished for the day, spend an hour trying to connect all the puzzle pieces they cut back into the pool. The original pool cover was by the pool in the bag it came in. The dumbest thing I've ever witnessed in my life.
Very early in my career, I was tasked with an industrial engineering project on improving efficiency on a high-volume product line. I guarantee you've seen the product. First, during a current state analysis, I determined that the company was losing around 8 cents per part shipped. We sold them for 29 cents each. That's not good, especially when you're producing millions of these things each month. I presented this to the executive management team. One of the VPs cut me off mid-sentence and said,
"Nonsense, we make it up in volume."
So, growing up, I used to think I was a once-in-a-lifetime genius, and to be honest, my school's low standards helped. I realized that I was not when I met a real one in my freshman year of college. The guy was 18 and studied physics at a pretty advanced level, composed music and played piano incredibly, and was writing a novel. Thing is, he was 18 and not quite mature enough for college. He never went to class because he thought he didn't need to, and once Skyrim came out, he never left his dorm anymore. Smartest person I had ever met before or since, and he failed out of college his first semester.
My brother-in-law had a master's degree in physics and maths. He was a teacher at a high school. He had a new house built. He thought he would save money by nailing on the drywall, sheetrock, gib board. He managed to put nails through a hot water pipe and the wiring. By the time he'd paid a plumber and electrician to fix up the mess, it cost a lot more. Later in life, he fell off a ladder and died.
Not incredibly stupid, but surprisingly, I have found myself working for many engineers, and unless you have a PhD, they are 100% sure they are smarter than you. The reality is that they are great at planning and logistics, but usually bad at fixing problems, but they never see it because they are so confident. Just today, I had to explain to an engineer that the reason his level said that a shelf was out of level was that the wall wasn't level, and he wasn't setting the level square on the shelf. So, it was level from side to side, but not front to back, and he had me drive all the way out to the site to show him how to operate a level. This took 45 minutes. He was convinced that he could see it. Next, his level was broken. Then my level was broken. Then he couldn't see it, so it must be level. Magic.
Wisdom and intelligence are two utterly different qualities. I've known people of normal or below normal intelligence who have navigated through life quite successfully. In the meantime, I also know some really smart people whom I wouldn't trust with a box of kitchen matches. The best example I can think of was the son of my parents' best friends. This kid, as my mother liked to tell me all the time, had an IQ off the charts. Mind you, I was no slouch, but I was an AB student, while Robert was an A+ student. But he was also just kind of a dullard, not the kind of person I'd want to spend time with. Or anyone, for that matter. My mother would literally ask me all the time, "Why can't you make the grades Robert does? Blah 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 bitty blah." Because, Mom, I'm enjoying high school and having friends and dates and a life. And while I earned a scholarship to a good liberal arts college, Robert got into Princeton. My mother was practically fetishizing Robert going to Princeton. Every single time I was home, I'd hear about Robert this and Robert that. How he was going to win a Nobel Prize, etc., etc. Except that Robert earned his degree in secondary education. Mind you, school teaching is a noble profession. But if you're going to burn through a couple of $100,000 of your parents' money at an Ivy League school, that's not the degree you really want to get. Robert graduates summa cum and gets a job at some inner-city school. And quits after a week on the job. Literally couldn't handle it. His next move is to migrate to New Mexico, where he becomes a shepherd. A freaking shepherd. A job that doesn't even require a high school diploma. And he still is a shepherd to this day, unless he's gone all in a bomber and is scrawling out manifestos and posting them on telephone poles around whatever backwoods town he lives in. My mother doesn't compare me to Robert anymore. Oh yeah. I almost forgot my brother-in-law. Smart guy, an engineer, who makes absolutely catastrophic life choices. Had a weekend special with a girl and got her pregnant. Met a different girl who had literally been thrown out of her house by her husband for cheating that very day and let her move in with him. Married her for long enough for him to pay off her credit cards, then cheated on him and gave him herpes. She left him for a doctor. And yet the guy says he'd still take her back, 20 years later. And I'm just getting warmed up with him.
If you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and check out more videos from the channel.